Every local knows there are places in Vegas where the neon glow does not reach, areas that have been left to rot while billions are poured into mega resorts. But what if this decline is not an accident? What if the city's obsession with a 4-mile stretch of road has created a tale of two cities, one for the rich and one for everyone else? In this video, we are taking you into the forgotten side of Vegas and counting down the 7 neighborhoods to avoid at all costs. How do you know if you are experiencing the real Vegas or the one they abandoned? This is not just about a few bad parts of town. This is the story of a deliberate, decades-long strategy where corporate interests and city planners poured every resource into the 4.2-mile Las Vegas Strip, creating a protected artificial paradise for tourists. The reality behind the glitz is sobering. While visitors marvel at the newest attractions in billion-dollar resorts, just blocks away locals struggle in neighborhoods plagued by crime, poverty, and neglect. The contrast is not coincidental. It is by design. The consequence of this focused development has been catastrophic for surrounding communities. This funneling of wealth, security, and development has starved local neighborhoods of the investment they needed to survive. As the Strip got richer and safer, the historic neighborhoods that built the city were left to decay, creating the dangerous zones we see today. It is a calculated betrayal of the very people and places that gave Vegas its soul. What makes this particularly insidious is how invisible it remains to the average visitor. The city has perfected the art of containing its problems, creating an experience where tourists can spend an entire week in Vegas without glimpsing the reality that exists just beyond the carefully curated boundaries of the resort corridor. To understand how Vegas created these zones of abandonment, we need to look at the evolution of the city's development priorities. This did not happen overnight. It was a slow, deliberate shift that transformed Las Vegas from a community into a corporate playground. The 1980s and the early 1990s marked the original sin, the moment when Wall Street and mega corporations took over Vegas. This was the era when Steve Wynn opened the Mirage, ushering in a new age of corporate-owned mega resorts. The city's focus shifted dramatically. No longer was the goal to build a thriving metropolitan area. Instead, success was measured solely by Strip revenue and shareholder returns. During this period, investment in local infrastructure began to dry up. West Las Vegas, a historically significant Black community with deep roots in the city's cultural history, saw public funding diverted to projects that would enhance the Strip experience. Roads, schools, and public services in local neighborhoods deteriorated, while billions flowed into creating Fantasyland resorts for tourists. The 2000s boom only expanded this divide. While City Center was receiving an unprecedented $9.2 billion in investment, creating a gleaming vertical city within the Strip, areas like Sunrise Manor and the Boulder Highway corridor became dumping grounds for problems the tourist corridor did not want to address. Crime, homelessness, and addiction were all pushed outward, away from the carefully manicured resort experience. This was when the stark geographic division became undeniable. West of Interstate 15 got the investment, east of it got the neglect. North of downtown became invisible to developers, while South Strip expansions received green lights and tax incentives. The geographic segregation of prosperity became the defining feature of modern Las Vegas. Then came the 2008 financial crisis, hitting Vegas harder than almost any other American city. When recovery funds and redevelopment initiatives were distributed, the pattern continued. Areas deemed critical for tourism received bailouts, tax breaks, and public-private partnerships. Meanwhile, older sections of North Las Vegas and communities along Nellis Boulevard in East Las Vegas were left to fend for themselves. The post-recession recovery only accelerated the decline of these neglected areas. As foreclosures swept through working-class neighborhoods, investors bought properties in bulk, converting owner-occupied homes into rentals with minimal maintenance and maximum profit extraction. The housing that remained affordable often came with a heavy cost in terms of safety, services, and stability. Throughout this timeline, one thing remained consistent. Local voices were systematically excluded from decision-making processes that determined their communities' futures. Public meetings about development were scheduled during working hours, held in locations inaccessible by public transportation, or advertised only in English in predominantly Spanish-speaking neighborhoods. The system was designed to silence those most affected by these decisions. This calculated neglect has created zones of containment, areas where the problems Vegas wants to hide are allowed to fester. Let us walk through the proof. The most jarring example of Vegas's tale of two cities. Located literally in the shadow of the Stratosphere Tower, this neighborhood sits less than 500 feet from billion-dollar resorts, yet exists in a different universe. Naked City earned its name decades ago when showgirls would sunbathe on the rooftops of the area's low-rise apartments. Today, those same buildings are crumbling, with boarded windows and graffiti-covered walls. The neighborhood has one of the highest crime rates in the valley, with robberies occurring at nearly 5 times the national average. What makes Naked City particularly revealing is its proximity to tourist wealth. Stand at the right intersection, and you can see both the stratosphere and abandoned buildings in the same frame. Police presence here is reactive, not preventive. They respond to incidents but do not maintain the constant presence. They do just blocks away on the Strip. Multiple redevelopment efforts have been announced for Naked City over the past 20 years. Nearly all have failed. Why? Because there is no real incentive to fix it, only to contain it. As long as the problems stay within these invisible boundaries, the tourism machine can keep running uninterrupted. The danger here lies in its proximity to a tourist area. The Fremont Street experience, with its famous canopy light show and street performers, draws thousands of visitors nightly. Walk just 2 blocks north, and you have crossed an invisible boundary into a different world. What makes this area particularly hazardous for visitors is the false sense of security. The bright lights of Fremont create the illusion that the entire downtown area is equally monitored and safe. In reality, property crime here occurs at 3 times the rate of the tourist corridor, with theft and car break-ins being particularly common. The strategy here is obvious. Concentrate security resources on the few blocks where tourists spend money, and let the surrounding areas absorb the spillover problems. The result is a neighborhood where residents face daily challenges that remain conveniently out of sight for Vegas visitors. This represents something deeper than just current statistics. It is evidence of historical betrayal. This historically black neighborhood was once the cultural heart of the city, home to the West Side's Black Strip, where legendary performers like Sammy Davis Jr. and Nat King Cole would go after performing for white audiences on the main strip during segregation. Today, West Las Vegas struggles with intergenerational poverty, gang activity, and some of the lowest property values in the valley. More than 36% of residents live below the poverty line, compared to just 14% countywide. The neighborhood has few grocery stores, limited healthcare facilities, and schools that consistently underperform state averages. What happened here was not just neglect, it was abandonment. As Vegas reinvented itself as a family-friendly destination in the 90s, then as a luxury playground in the 2000s, it systematically erased its connection to this historically significant community. The message was clear: West Las Vegas and its history were not part of the brand Vegas wanted to sell. Along Nellis Boulevard, there is another type of failure. This area became a landing zone for working-class families pushed out of more expensive parts of the valley. What looked like affordable housing became a trap. Neighborhoods with minimal public services, few economic opportunities, and deteriorating infrastructure. The statistics tell the story. Schools in this area have among the highest transiency rates in the district, with some reporting that nearly 40% of students change schools mid-year. This instability reflects the precarious economic situation of many residents, who move frequently as they chase affordable rent or flee unsafe conditions. Strip mall vacancies along Nellis hover around 30%, compared to less than 8% in Summerlin or Henderson. The businesses that do survive here are predominantly payday loan centers, liquor stores, and fast food restaurants, extractive enterprises that take money out of the community rather than building wealth within it. This isn't accidental. It's the consequence of zoning decisions, business tax incentives, and public resource allocation that prioritized other parts of the valley. East Las Vegas became the place where working-class essential workers could afford to live but not thrive. It was close enough to provide labor for the Strip, and far enough that tourists would never see their struggles. It isn't just a neighborhood, it is a linear ecosystem of transience and desperation stretching for miles through the Eastern Valley. Once a main thoroughfare into Vegas, it is now a monument to urban decay, lined with weekly motels, pawn shops, and convenience stores. These weekly motels tell a particularly dark story about Vegas's housing crisis. For around $800 a month, families live in single rooms with kitchenettes, paying weekly because they cannot afford security deposits or pass credit checks for regular apartments. Despite costing more annually than many apartments, these motels offer no path to stability or equity. The crime statistics along Boulder Highway are staggering. Assault rates are 73% above the city average, with drug offenses and prostitution creating a constant cycle of police activity. Yet enforcement remains focused on individual incidents rather than addressing the systemic causes. This corridor exists as a direct result of a housing system that offers no safety net for the vulnerable. As affordable housing disappeared from central Vegas, Boulder Highway became the last resort for those on the economic margins. The working poor, the recently released from incarceration, those struggling with addiction, and families one paycheck away from homelessness represent our final zones of abandonment, areas where the urban decay is actively spreading. These once stable working-class neighborhoods have experienced slow-motion collapse as infrastructure aged, economic opportunities vanished, and property values stagnated. In Sunrise Manor, public parks have fallen into disrepair, with broken playground equipment and insufficient lighting creating spaces that feel abandoned rather than maintained. Retail centers built in the 1970s and the 1980s now stand at 40 to 50% vacancy rates, creating blighted commercial strips that drag down surrounding property values. It tells a similar story, particularly in its original core. Municipal bankruptcy in 2012 led to drastic cuts in city services that have never fully recovered. Police response times in these areas average 15 to 20 minutes for non-emergency calls, compared to under 5 minutes in newer, more affluent parts of the valley. These are not just isolated pockets of poverty, they are expanding zones where the lack of investment and opportunity is visibly spreading block by block, year by year. The neglect is contagious, and without intervention, it continues to grow. The biggest scam in Vegas is not at a poker table. It is the illusion that the entire city is the glamorous paradise you see on TV. The existence of these 7 neighborhoods is not a failure of the system. It is a feature. They are the cost of doing business, the sacrifice zones required to keep the Strip's fantasy alive. This urban apartheid serves a purpose. By creating contained areas where poverty, addiction, and crime can exist without disrupting the tourist experience, Vegas protects its primary economic engine. The city's no more riffraff strategy extends beyond the casino floor. By systematically defunding and ignoring these communities, they have applied the same logic to the very people who live here. The goal is to keep the problems out of sight and out of the minds of the tourists spending money. What makes this strategy particularly effective is how it exploits the transient nature of both visitors and many residents. Tourists stay for an average of just 3.4 days, not long enough to venture beyond the carefully curated experiences. Meanwhile, Las Vegas has one of the most transient populations in America, with nearly 40% of residents saying they expect to leave within 5 years. This constant churn prevents the formation of community power needed to demand change. The neglect of these 7 areas also serves another purpose. It creates a pressure valve for the parts of Vegas that are deemed worth protecting. Need somewhere to house recently released inmates? Direct them to weekly motels on Boulder Highway. Homeless encampments becoming too visible near the Arts District. Conduct sweeps that push people toward Naked City or West Las Vegas. It is a system of human geography designed to concentrate problems rather than solve them. The only way this changes is when the neglect becomes too visible to ignore, when the containment fails and the problems spill over into the areas they are trying to protect. We have seen this cycle before. Periods of increased violent crime on the Strip lead to temporary investment in surrounding areas, only for attention to wane once tourists feel safe again. This is the real house edge in Las Vegas, a system designed to extract maximum value while externalizing the social costs to neighborhoods deemed expendable. Just as a casino's mathematical advantage ensures profit over time, this urban strategy guarantees that the house, the major casino corporations and their political allies, always wins, while the players, the residents of these abandoned neighborhoods, are set up to lose. They bet on you not noticing the decay just a few blocks from your hotel. They are counting on your silence. Do you think this is a sustainable future for Las Vegas, or a betrayal of the city's soul? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you believe in exposing the truth, subscribe and hit the like button so more people see what's really going on.